Hey, legends, welcome back to the Mason Cox Show. Now, today's guest is a very, very special one. He's played in 4 grand finals. He's a 2-time All-Australian. He's the first First Nations player to play 200 games for the Collingwood Football Club. He's kicked that 2008 goal of the year. It's a spectacular one. He's also played 225 games, kicked 270 goals. He's an absolute legend, a man that is very, very proud of his culture, as he should be. An absolute legend. I can't wait to get into this. So settle in and let's roll. All right, well, let's get straight into it. An absolute legend, as we mentioned. Welcome, Leon Davis.
Thank you.
Huge.
Good to be here.
I've got to ask this. I'm going to ask this at the end of this. I'm going to do a bit of a teaser for everyone listening, but I want to ask you the top 5 Indigenous players of all time, and maybe a few of those, your favorite goals you've ever seen in AFL. So there's going to be a few of those throughout this. We're going to trickle them in, but first I got to ask the question: what the heck is a 2008 AFL Hall of Fame tribute match that you played in?
Yeah, I think it was just to celebrate the game. They got all the best players from across the comp to come together. State Origin sort of died off, so This one was massive. Everyone bought in. Everyone was keen to play it. The best against the best, Vicks and All-Stars and stuff like that. So to be part of that game was a privilege, to rub shoulders with, the best, the greats of the game and that kind of stuff. Adam Goods, all the guys, Chris Judd, Fev, all these guys running around was amazing. So to be a part of that and, just went along and enjoyed it. Myself and Matty Stokes from Geelong sort of sat in the back, and I remember we sat in the back and we go, "What are we doing here?" You know what I mean? Like, are we really playing in this game? So it was a great experience, and one that I won't forget. So it was good.
Was there anything crazy that came out of the game? Like, I think of the last time that happened, right, was like the Vic versus All-Stars that did the fundraising for the fires that had happened in Australia. Was there anything insane that happened in the game? Or was it like a blowout? Like, was it just like you just kind of stopped playing defense at some point, or people actually were genuinely caring about?
No, I think playing? Whenever you play the Vicks, they've got that pride about them.
Yeah.
They want to win no matter what. We had Mark Choco Williams as our coach, and he was on. He was on, and he gave, he let the boys know that we weren't there to lose and just run around and take the piss. We had to actually play and try and win, that pride stuff as well. So with all the guys on the field, and I just remember the quality of football was just crazy. Just quick movement, skills were on. You had Buddy down one end, Motlopping that up my end and that, and, just Richo was down in the forward line for us as well. So to see those guys playing and to be out there running around, it was just surreal to look one way and you see a superstar, then you got Andrew McLeod, you got, all these guys running around. It was just crazy. So I think for mine, the memories that I have was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The expectation on myself wasn't a lot there because I didn't feel like I actually deserved to be there, but I had fun and really enjoyed the game.
Far out. It's I wish they kind of go back to the old state of origins.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Like something that, I watched growing up.
Yeah.
And something that I feel if the game was to bring it back, I think the boys would buy in and it'll be a bit the same as the Hall of Fame match that I played in.
Yeah. Maybe even AFLX. Did you like the AFLX?
No, I didn't play in that. I didn't know. I was before that. I was before that.
Like if they had like the rampage.
I was before that. So but it's a bit different. But as long as, the guys can come along and buy in and give it their best, I think the fans will come along and they'll love it.
Well, I'm going to go into this because we're going to go into a bit of your backstory. Now, this is a straight quote from Steelside Bottom. He played his 300th and you were there and supporting him. And this is quote unquote, he said, "I'd love to be able to sit down with someone that doesn't know about Leon's culture and be able to give them a story on where he came from and the way he grew up." Now, a lot of people out here listening might be, wondering what that is. Can you give us a bit of an inclination of what it was like growing up in WA?
Look, for mine, I grew up on Balladon country. Which is an hour east of Perth in Northam. My mother's country, my father's country. I'm also a part of the Whadjuk, tribe from in Perth and around Perth. My culture is really, really rich back home. It's probably put me on a path to follow my dreams at a very young age and was always involved in my culture. A lot of First Nations people aren't that fortunate. Stolen generation and all. A lot of our culture is lost and for a long time, it was government policy where you couldn't actually practice your culture.
Yeah.
If you were caught passing down your culture and practicing it or speaking your language or whatever, you were sent to jail. So it was government policy. It was against the law to actually, for us, as a First Nations people, traditional owners of this land, to actually practice our culture for a very long time. So for mine to be able to grow up with my old man and teach us what he knew, what he was taught, I'm very, very privileged to have that. But it's very unique. I know a lot of general society and the whole of Australia sort of, have this perception that all First Nations people are the same. We have over 250 different tribal groups across the country. Where I grew up, there was 14 different tribal groups in my area.
How big's that area?
You got about a 200K radius around Perth.
Wow.
So it's a huge area. But all, different customs, different, similar languages, obviously being in, close proximity of each other. But for mine, it was, very, very privileged to be able to grow up and practice my culture, hunting, artifact making, all this kind of stuff from a very young age. Was very fortunate that my dad had that knowledge, but then was able to pass it on to me. Part of my role at the club is to share my culture and my journey to hopefully inspire First Nations people to seek out who they are. If they were part of the stolen generation and a product of it, I think, it's important to obviously find who your family are and where you belong and what your tribal groups are, your totems, all this stuff. We're a very, very spiritual people. And for mine, if you're not connected to your culture, you're not whole. You can't, be whole and be your complete self. So for mine, being very, very connected to my culture, like I said before, it put me on a path of obviously chasing my dream and wanting to play AFL football, and knowing my culture and who I was as a person, who I belong to, definitely helped in that sense. So, non-First Nations people, I guess it's taking it upon yourself to not wait for NAIDOC week, not wait for third Doug round when it's a hot topic of society to then get involved. We live on First Nations land all year round, 24/7, 365 days, So for mine, it's don't wait for these opportunities to then all of a sudden get keen to learn and want to know more. The information's there. It's easily accessible. You can easily get this information, social media, Google, all the technology we have now. It's accessible. So, take it upon yourself to have those conversations in your household. Teach your kids, what you can learn and pass that down to the next generation, because a lot of the times people just don't know. A lot of stuff happens because, racism and all this kind of stuff. It happens because people aren't educated and people just don't know. But if you take it upon yourself to want to learn and want to, know more and be educated, it's only going to help, reconciliation and this country come together and move forward together.
Yeah, it's so true. I think whenever I first came here, I was fortunate enough to have Trav Varka was at the club, and I was totally ignorant, didn't know anything about First Nations culture or anything like that. And he was one of those people that's very proud of where he's from. Get an amazing family and stuff he's got now with Kim and everyone else. And it was cool for me to be able to have someone kind of walk me through it. If that kind of makes sense. And he was such a big part in my development as far as like off-field stuff and his kind of leadership and stuff like that. He's an amazing human. But can you bring us back? You said like your dad kind of passed on the different stuff from your culture. Like you talked about hunting, right? Like I want to ask this because Bobby Hills told me he'll take me out kangaroo hunting. It's a bucket list thing for me. Like, is that something you did back in WA? Like give me a bit of understanding. I love for people to understand and to get an idea of some of the stuff that comes with culture. Like, you talk about hunting, you talk about, like making things from trees and making things from the land and how you're so connected to the land and things like that. Like, can you give a bit of an understanding of maybe like something specific, right, that you kind of done and maybe your dad's passed on as far as skills and things like that?
I suppose a big part of my upbringing and part of my culture is the didgeridoo.
Can you play didgeridoo?
I can.
Let's go.
I can. Still working on it. All right. I got some family and some, uncles, and my dad, he plays it. He does welcomes back home. He's a very, very, culturally rich person. So he kills it on the didge. He's, I remember I'll just tell you this quick story. We had our Mad Monday.
Yeah.
And they were over and they came down and Dad brought the didge down and he had everyone's on it. Like, we're all, it's in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So Mad Monday in an afternoon, you can imagine how the boys were and all that.
Drinks flowing.
Well, Dad walks in with the didge and all the family come and all that stuff in the afternoon. Then Dad goes, "Oh, son, I want to play the didge for all the boys." I was like, "Yeah, sweet. Yeah. So he plays the didge. You couldn't hear a pin drop.
Really?
The whole place was just dead quiet. All the boys are standing there just going, wow. And Dad's playing the didge and explaining what the sounds mean and he plays a story on it. So that kind of stuff. So some of the stuff that Dad's been able to pass down to us is going out to the bush and finding them.
Yeah.
you don't just rock up to any tree and just cut it and, it's a perfectly made didgeridoo for you.
How do you make it? Do you have to have like a drill that goes through to be able to create the hole?
Great question.
I'm just riffing now. I'm so interested.
Probably 99% of everyone watching are thinking the same thing. They're going, how, like this kind of stuff. But so what happens is you go to a certain part of the country, like Bobby Hill, you mentioned him, like he's from where I'm from. He's from Northern.
Legend.
His grandmother and my dad are first cousins.
Oh, really?
So very, very close. I watched him grow up.
Yeah.
Like I watched him as a junior.
He's still growing.
Really clear. Yeah, he's still. Well, I'm the same. He's catching me. So, but yeah, look, with the didgeridoo, you go out and something that my dad had to pass down to us is, and we learned it the hard way, but you go out to a certain part of the country and you find them. It's not just restricted to Western Australia. You find them in Victoria, you find them in SA. You can but you have to know what tree. Yeah. You have to know what area. You have to know. So for us, how they're made is the white ants actually eat through the middle.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, but the white ants, they actually eat up through the middle. But you have to find them at the right time. You can't just go cut because it might be a solid tree. Now, I've done it. I went and cut a solid tree. Like, I found one, Dad. I found one. Yeah, sweet. Cut it. And he's standing there going, looking at me. He's just looked at me, and he knows it's not a ditch. Yeah. He knows it's not one. He knows it's a solid tree. So he walks over slowly, and I've cut it, and I've gone, oh, it's not actually one, it's not ready. Straight on the back. Now, come with me, I'll show you, and had to show me how to do it and how to find it. And trial and error for me to learn. But you slowly gain those tools, and with his help and guidance, I know where to go, I know where to get them, I know how to make them, I know how to play them, all this kind of stuff. But there's a process to it. Same as with, hunting. Yeah. Where to find the kangaroos, the emus out in the bush, how to, where they're going to be, what they're going to, what time of day, night, day, morning, whatever it is, how to go out and find them. Yeah. There's ways to catch them without a gun, without anything. You go out, and my dad's really good at that.
What are you saying? He's tackling a kangaroo?
He goes into the bush and he's got his techniques on how to catch them. So that stuff
by hand.
That stuff I'm still learning.
What?
And my dad's really good at that. So you go out and he's got all these techniques that's been passed down, and you use your traditional, your weapons and your tools and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like me, I've got a rifle at home, so I just take that out and the easy way. The easy way where, the closer you shoot them to the car, you don't have to work as hard. But for mine, like these days we do that because, our, traditional hunting methods, are still there, and we practice them and we teach them. But for mine, having bush tucker and, kangaroo meat is big in our family. So for mine, when I go out, I'll go and get heaps and bring it back home, give it to all the elders in the community. You give it to aunties and uncles and family members that, probably don't have the capacity to go.
Yeah.
And all my cousins and stuff like that, they all do it back home as well. That's what we do. We go out, we'll get enough to go, okay, we'll get, instead of getting one or two for ourselves, we'll go, okay, we'll get, 8, 9, whatever it is, and we'll come back home and we'll share it around with all the family in the community. So a lot of that stuff Dad's passed down, but the didgeridoo is one that's really, really hard to, you need to know where to find them. You need to know what tree it is. The tree has to be just right. There's certain ways, knocking on it, shaking it, all this kind of stuff. If there's leaves on the top of it, like all these things that I was able to pick up off my dad. Now I comfortably go out when I need a didgeridoo and, need a new one or whatever. I'll go out and cut it, make it, sand it down, all this kind of stuff to get it ready. Like put some artwork on it or whatever. All that kind of stuff. And that's the same with artifacts as well. You got to know what wood to use. You got to know what tree it is. You got to know, you can't just go cut any tree because if you get a pair of tap sticks, you get a tree that's not right for it. You bang them together and it's not
the same sound.
Not the same sound, whereas down where I live now in Goodnichamara country, they've got a totally different, tree that they get for it, the blackwood, similar to what's back home, but a different tree altogether, so learning that there. Yeah. And then when I go home, it's totally different sound as well. All this stuff in our culture that's passed down. And like I said before, it was against the law to actually practice our culture. So for us to have what we still do, we're very, very fortunate.
Is there any way, I guess, like thinking about the future, right? Like obviously you pass things down from generation to generation. Is there anything that people are doing, I guess, in documenting styles of like putting stuff down in written form or recording as far as language and stuff like that? Because I think like one thing that I've come over here and noticed is people talk about that, the stolen generation and what was lost during that time and still trying to catch back up to what was there.
Yep.
Like, I remember I went through Tennant Creek with the with the team, and there was someone there that was doing something quite phenomenal where they took all the different kind of elders and stuff from the area, and they were recording them speaking language because they didn't really have the people to pass it down to. Yeah. Is there anything like that going on back home, maybe? Yeah, definitely. For mine, you got places where you can even get online, and you can see I've got a dictionary of my language that I've been able to, like Dad had it, and I've gone and got photocopies of it because it's something that I passed out. I used to work with my brother who's got his own business back home, as one knitting it's called, and they do cultural programs. We done it in the Juvenile Detention Centre a few years ago. So that was something that, having that dictionary, we could actually teach language like my, Wajak, Baladong, my Noongar language to the younger generation, which is something that's amazing to still have. But there are places all over that do, language classes. You go to a class and you learn how to speak, Noongar language back home. Like there's these kind of stuff going on. But the elders to be able to pass that down with the luxury of having, video recorders and all this stuff now, filming people actually passing down culture is amazing. Didn't have it back in the day, like I said, and I'll say it again, it was illegal for us to actually practice our culture. But now, for what we do have, so much has been lost. And we'll never get that back because of that. But the stuff that we do have is very important that we keep it and we record it, we get it down, and there's different ways of passing it on now, but for it to be passed on through word of mouth and ceremonies and artifacts and message sticks and all this stuff for 60,000 plus years is amazing to still have it. Yeah. Generation to generation to be passed down, going through the law, going through, ceremony grounds and knowing how to travel from one place to another. It's not, we'll go from here and it takes half an hour to get there. Yeah. It might take a day's walk, 2 days walk. But for us, we had to know where all the water holes were along the way. Yeah. Because you got your family with you, you got kids, now you can't just go straight because there's no water holes. And we call them yammer holes back home. And you had to go, a day's walk might have took you a week because you had to go around this way and then back over this way. There's plenty of kangaroos and emus, bush tucker there. There's a lot of berries and all that stuff here. So the way you'd go was passed down your song lines, you know what I mean? And the way you had to walk there and the way you had to get there was totally different to just going, okay, for now, like we get in a car and go, okay, what's the quickest time? Yeah. You even argue with Google Maps and that because you go, no, I know a shortcut. I know, so that stuff. But, now it's how, it's all time efficient. But back then it was, you had to go where the water was, you had to go where the food was. And all that stuff was passed down, So now the stuff we do have is very important to hold on to that and learn that. And my place in that is I'll learn what I can off my father. I was over here playing footy for 12 years. Yeah. So to be over here, and live here and not be able to do that, is a big sacrifice to make. Yeah. And a lot of First Nations people do that. Yeah. They go off country, they go away from their family, their cultural commitments to come and play footy. So when people do leave the game, people don't have that understanding of, there's a higher calling for First Nations people. It's our culture. It's learning and passing on that education, that the cultural responsibilities that we have. Is there anything, I'm trying to think of like anything that was a major kind of turning point in your life, right? Like obviously, you come to Melbourne and stuff like that, but is there anything from a cultural standpoint, like, is there, I think about like, let's say for instance, like the Jewish, culture, right? Like you become a man, you do your bar mitzvah and stuff like that. Is there anything like with your culture of like a coming to man kind of experience? So for our culture, a lot of in going through the law and manhood and stuff like that. Yeah. A lot, because westernized ways, it's, you're 14, you're 15, you're 16, you're 18, you're legal, you can do what you want. In our tribal ways, in our law customs, in our cultural way, some guys are seen as men at 13. Yeah. 14. Now, you come to obviously law enforcement and police and that stuff like that, and they go, how old are you? I'm 14. But in his culture and in his life and everything that he knows and everything that he believes in, he's a man. Yeah, he's the adult, yeah. He's the adult. So then all of a sudden it's the law ways in westernized ways, he's a kid. Yeah. But for him, you don't dare disrespect him because he's a man. He's done his cultural, responsibilities and duties, and he's a man. So that's a balance of westernized ways and our cultural ways, which today's day and age we're a lot better at, but we've still got so far to go, because to get that balance right for First Nations people, because cultural is up here. Everything else, westernized ways, is down here. Yeah.
So to balance that up and go, okay, this is just as important as this, and let's try and get it and gel it together. That's where a lot of places, if they get that right for our First Nations people, which at the club we're slowly getting there, and you can see how much Bobby loves the club, Bobby loves playing footy, Ash, Krug, like all the guys here, you know, I can see the difference in them because I played here too.
Yeah.
And it was totally different when I was here because my culture was hidden. I had to do that in my own time and I couldn't really do it at the club when I played. You know, so that kind of stuff is probably the difference between what it is now to what it was then. But with our cultural ways, there's a lot of understanding that the Westernized and non-First Nations people need to learn and understand because our culture comes first and our family comes first. I retired probably 10 times in my career because, you know, and an example of that was my uncle had passed away back home. Like, sorry business, I had to be home. And what happened at the club was I need to go home. I said this publicly before and it's nothing new, but I rang the club and said, look, I got to go home. I had an uncle that passed away. Sorry business and all. See, I need to be home with my family, you know, but I think we had a game coming up and they said, oh, look, just play and then go home after the game. What I did was I said, yep, no worries, being young and all and didn't really like the, you know, the conflict of it. And you know, I felt like I was asking for permission to go home.
Yeah.
So what I did was, yep, no worries, yep, I'll see ya. And I think it was a day off the next day, and then the next day we trained. So in between then, I jumped in my car and drove home.
To Perth.
Jumped in my car.
From Melbourne.
Drove from Melbourne and drove to Perth because that's all I thought was, well, I know how to follow the roads back home. Jumped in the car, drove home. They're ringing me, where are you? I'm back in Perth. Oh, so you actually did need to go home? Yes, I did. You know, this kind of stuff where my culture was way more important than playing footy. And I told them I'm not coming back. But my love for footy as well, after I've gone through my sorry business and that, was, okay, yep, I want to play footy again. Come back, train, play footy, all that kind of stuff. Them lessons really, really had to be taught the hard way from myself to say, look, my family comes first, my culture comes first, and at a drop of a hat, I'd walk away from the game if I needed to be home with my family.
Yeah.
Now, my family were very supportive. They knew how much I wanted to play footy and loved playing footy. So they really kept a lot from me for me not to go home. There's a lot of stuff they didn't tell me, like all this stuff, like, oh, son, stay there, you're right, you know, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
You know, so, but the cultural side of it, which I know a lot of First Nations people can relate to, is that if you give them an option to go, okay, you play footy or your culture and your people and your family, you'll pick our family every time.
Yeah.
You know, that's what's most important to us, you know. Although we love playing footy and it's a dream of ours and you know, to show what we can do on a footy oval is one thing, but the most important thing for myself growing up was my family. So to last 12 years here and go through what I went through, you know, it was amazing to have that family support, you know, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without them.
Yeah, it's insane, man. I hope you realize this. I was going to say this at the very end, but I'll say it now. I hope you realize you've laid the foundation for people now to have a better experience in football.
Like, yeah, definitely. Like
you going through some of the shit you had to go through, like now allows people that are here today to have a better experience than you did.
Yeah, definitely. Appreciate that.
I hope you do realize that because it is a massive thing. I think sometimes you can either choose to be bitter or choose to realize that and say, like, I'm here to make this place a better place. And I feel like that's what you're doing. Yeah.
And like an example for mine is with yourself. Like, I asked you before how long you said 9 years, you know, and like you said, coming here and being very, very, you know, not knowing is what it is, you know, and you can say it's ignorant, you can say whatever, but it's just not knowing.
Yeah.
Like me personally, I don't expect people to come here to this country and understand the inner workings of, you know, First Nations people and non-First Nations people and the history of our country and all that stuff. I'd be the same going somewhere else. You know, it's what it is. You don't know. But like yourself, if you're passionate about it and you want to learn, you do. You know, you had Trav Varco teach you so much and it didn't stop with Trav. You're forever, you know, and we remember we had someone spoke on, I think it was a yes vote, and they said they asked for questions, and you were one to say, yep, straight away you had a question. So that stuff for me is what it's all about. Yeah, you have a platform like that, and you're in an environment like that. You just ask questions.
Yeah,
you know, a lot of people sit there and go, okay, yep, nah, you know, it's embarrassing. I don't want to mess up. I don't want to ask a silly question, or I don't want to, you know, get found out or whatever, and all this stuff. They get nervous about it, but my advice would be to be brave enough to make mistakes because for mine, that's the only way you're going to learn.
Yeah.
Like all the conversations I've had with Jeff Brown, Jody Sizer, like all Liquor, like all these guys since I've come back to the club is letting them know and ensuring that they know that anytime we sit in the room, Ask whatever questions you want. It's a safe space. You know, it might come across as this way or that way, but for mine, ask the question so you know, and educate yourself so you know. Then you can go out and, you know, obviously help other people understand as well.
Do you feel valued at the club now?
I do.
Good.
And it's been probably with my cultural side of it, probably wasn't valued. You know, for my football side of it, very, you know, obviously valued and you know, spent 10 years here, 12 years actually. And you know, like what I was able to do on a footy oval was different to my cultural side. So that balance of getting that right for myself was an everyday struggle.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I've said it publicly before, I'd get to the front door and be like, oh, big deep breath. Okay, yep, all right, let's go. Got to go in here and put on a brave face and, you know, and sort of put your armor on to, if anything happened, just brush it off and that. You know, some of the shit that I've been through since a very young age, you know, it takes a toll on you. And then to come here and play footy and have to back it up and perform and after going through what I go through on a weekly basis, daily basis with, you know, getting followed around in the shops by security guards because of the colour of my skin, getting pulled over by the police ridiculous amounts of time. You know, like it's something that we went up to Tennant Creek and we had, I think it was one of the girls with us and I can't remember which one it was, but I asked, you know, and it was me and Big Roo. He was in the front. He was sitting on the side of me.
Yeah.
And she was in the back and like we're sitting there and we're talking and we can relate, you know, obviously both colour of our skin and stuff like that. And then the conversation sort of come about with, you know, talking about culture and you know, importance of culture and education, all this kind of stuff. And then sort of we got around to it and don't know how the question come up, but it was, how many times have you been pulled over by the police? And she said 0. And me and Rui just looked at each other like, what? The luxury, like, you know, and we sort of went, what? No, like, you know, and looked at Rui, and we sort of nodded at each other because, you know, we know that's just something that happens. You know, for mine, every time I go past a police car, I'll look in my rear vision mirror. I'll make sure my seatbelt's on. My heart will start racing a bit quicker, like all this stuff that happens. And it's that education of, that used to happen all the time. And then I'd get to the club and then to play football, you know, and still under that pressure. And then you got to back it up. You got to train good. You got to be fit. You got to have your skin folds down, all this stuff, which I'm never really had much, you know, didn't happen too often, but but that kind of stuff, you know, you got to, the pressure's on and then you got to perform on top of all that, you know. After I won All Australian award in 2009, the first one. Leaving that award ceremony, I got pulled over and harassed by the police.
Really?
And it's like, I'm on a high. And then it's like, yep, just like
back
that.
To reality
you
of
brought,
like
you brought back down. You brought back down. So
you were pulled over on the night.
On the night, heading home, pulled over, this your car? Where'd you get it from? All this stuff. And then the superior officer came around and noticed who I was. And that's what changed the whole dynamic. And then had the cheek to ask for a photo.
I've had that, yeah.
You know, like that kind of stuff. It's like, can I just, you know, just let me have this moment? No, you can't. Yeah. Like, but it happens regularly and First Nations people can relate. You know, it was something that happened growing up all the time, always getting harassed, pulled over, that kind of stuff. But hopefully through education, hopefully through sharing our stories and that, things can change. And I think it's gotten better than what it's been the generation before me, a little bit better, but it's going to have to keep going. It's going to have to keep going, you know.
Do you still keep your All-Australian jacket in the back just in case someone...
No, just a trophy back then.
Hey, I don't know if you see this thing, man.
You know, just a trophy back in my day. We didn't get
a trophy,
we didn't get a jacket. So that's under lock and key back home with my dad. He's got a lot of my, a lot of my stuff that, you know, through my football career and that, he's got it all back home. And
yeah.
He never lets anyone touch it. He never lets anyone go in that room where it all is.
Super proud.
After he's had a couple of beers, he starts to bring some stuff out to show that, you know, the family and that, look here what my son did. Yeah. And, you know, a bit of comparing with you know, his brothers and his family's kids as well. So, which is a bit of a funny story that everyone knows that, but in my family. But yeah, look, back then it was just a trophy. So, you know, it was, and the first one that I won, I wasn't even going to go. My manager must have knew because he was going, you got to go. You got to go. No, you got to be. And I hated all that stuff. I hated wearing a suit. I hated having to go and be in that environment, you know, and have to sit there and, you know, not really talk to anyone and, you know, very shy back then. So, yeah, almost didn't go to that. And then I ended up winning. So I was like, how good's this? You know,
how good's this?
Yeah.
Did you get anything else? Is like, I know some people like, you know, you get like a TV or something like that.
Nah. Just a trophy.
Just a trophy.
Just a trophy. And knowing that you're part of the team that's the best in the world.
Yeah.
You know,
I love how you put the world.
The world. Oh, yeah. Well,
might as well just open it up to the rest of the globe.
I'm an NBA fan. So they got all NBA. We've got all Australian. We should make it all world because we're the best. Like, I don't think unless, I'm big on the athleticism of American sports. If that was a tap into our game.
Yeah.
But different story altogether.
We could go on a tangent on that one.
You're showing it yourself.
Oh, and I'm a broke-ass athlete from the U.S., so there's plenty better than me, man. But we'll get into your playing career. There's so much to cover here. I'm going to probably roll through a few of these things pretty quickly. But you played with people like Bucks Pindles, Shaw, Swan, Chris Tarrant, Didak, Rocca, Cloak, like all these iconic names that, have gone down in history. Like, is there anyone that you, looking back on your career, you not necessarily idolized, but you really felt like a connection with?
I suppose as far as playing, I think Bucks just stood out, just how dominant he was. He was the hardest worker, just a workhorse. Like you see it in the gym. And for mine at a young age to see how hard he worked and going to Collingwood, he was the only player I knew.
Yeah.
Like there was no one else. Like, and when I got drafted to Collingwood, because I wanted to stay home in WA and play for West Coast or Fremantle. When Collingwood picked me, sort of looked at my mum and she goes, "Yeah, son, you got to go to Melbourne." And I'm just like, oh. And then the phone rang and and all that stuff. But getting to the club and I knew, obviously Bucks, watched him play and, wasn't a Collingwood. My mum was a Collingwood supporter. So she was screaming, she was happy and, my son's going to play for my team and all this stuff. But then getting to the club and seeing how Bucks went about it and played his footy, and trained and just, ball skills and just how he went about it. That's why he's one of the greats of the game. You know what I mean? And then you got Taz, like to see him and no one really replicates what he was able to do as far as a forward, 16, 17 marks a game, this kind of stuff, screamers, hangers, and just his fitness and the size of him and just his work rate, second to none, so that kind of stuff. And then, you got Rocca, Pebs, funny story with him is when I first moved over, I lived in Preston and he lived up from me. So he'd pick me up every morning on the way to training.
Wow.
And I reckon I made him wait at the front for 10, 15 minutes every time. And then we'd but he's really close with him. He looked after me when I first came over. So I've got that special spot with him. But just, him as well. Like he wasn't out of range anytime he got the ball. Yeah. He could kick a barrel 80 metres, and everyone waited for it. Yeah. Everyone, kick a barrel like this stuff, but he'd kick a drop punt 75. So there was no worries for him, but for him to have that presence and for him to play the game the way he did, was amazing as well. And then you got Dids, you got, Swanee, still real close with Swanee and Dids and those guys when I see him and that. But Dids was one that came in and, his skills and work rate and really changed the way a half forward flank played the game. His work rate and, he won a best and fairest with us. To watch him go about it the way he did, and I played in the same position. So it took a lot off him and his work rate and all that kind of stuff and it sort of developed me and helped me, better my game. Swanee, wouldn't have the biggest pre-seasons, but he'd go out and dominate.
Skip holds?
Nah, we dodged that most of the time. But But it's always funny with Swanee. Like blokes would have the battle up the front to win. Yeah, we'd have the battle down the back to lose.
Shit, that was me and Brody.
He'd go around me, then I'd go around him, and we'd almost always finish the same. Yeah. Heater would be the same. He'd be down the back with us as well. But then he'd have that little spurt at the end to obviously not come last. But me and Swanee were just like, down the back sort of, and then ball skills would come in and we'd, just work hard and, get the ball, find a pill, all that kind of stuff. So, but Swanee was one of those guys. But just the way he, sort of footy didn't seem like footy was that important to him. He just went out and had some fun and played footy, dominated, to see him come in and with no tattoos and leave with a full body, sleeve was good. So, but, for him to play the game the way he did was amazing. So, Reece Shaw's another one, Ben Johnson, those two guys really looked after me when I first came. So, they're a big part of why I stayed at the club and didn't go home after, want to go to another team. They were huge in helping me settle and look after me. Reece, I played against him in the under-18s comp, and Jono as well, but I played on Reece. He played at full forward and I went to back pocket to play on him. I had to tag him in the final and we won. So I'll chuck that in there for him.
Chuck that in there. Don't forget that.
Again. So that's something that we always laugh and joke about. But to play with some of the guys that I've played with, still playing, like he was one that, came in and really just, sort of worked hard from the start, and you can see, that paying off for him now, and Pendle's the same. Excuse me. Pendle's was one that, he was a professional from day one, and he'd be the first one in the gym, last one to leave, and I'm looking at him like, hey, young fella, you don't have to, and then you get to now and you go, you can see why. And that's something that I tell everyone, all kids that I talk to, I sort of use him as an example to say, be professional, do what you do, get everything. If you want to get everything out of it, you got to put everything into it. Yeah. To see him go about it and still be playing now, and enjoying his footy, and still performing, there's no doubt why. You know what I mean? He's won nearly everything you can win in the AFL. So, and he's obviously the ultimate professional, and he loves the game and what he's able to, to teach. Steelo's the same, the work rate, and I don't think you've ever seen him with an angry face. He's done it with a smile over his whole career. And the pleasing thing about Steelo is he's brought so many people along with him.
Yeah. All the shepherding.
And all the shepherding. We've seen him all for 5 minutes when he, decided to do his knee on his 300th. So
never seen more shepherding people than after the 300th game in the rooms.
Yeah, big family, but Steele being Steele, his personality is infectious, and everyone loves him, and he's so caring, and just like I say, brings everyone along with him.
Was there anyone that ever gave you like an almighty spray? Like I think of Bucks and some of the coaches you had. Is there anyone just absolutely railed into you?
No, I was pretty fortunate. I've seen a few given out to other people.
Yeah. You always hiding out
Jono,
the back.
Well, for a lot of my career, I sat up the back, and then I finally made the decision one day to go sit down the front. And
is this in team meetings?
Team meetings, and then
thing I think people don't realize that whether you sit in the very front or you sit in the very back, and you're trying to not be seen.
I used to sit up the back all the time. I'd have one seat. I'd always sit there, sit up the back, because of something that I've always done as far as going through what I've gone through. I've always liked to sit where I can see everything.
Yeah.
I have to see everyone. I can't let people sit behind me. I have to control where I sit and see everyone, because if anything happens, I've got to be ready for it.
Yeah, you're
this
aware.
kind of, and that takes a toll. But to automatically, every time I get on a bus, every time I walk in a room, I have to sit up the back. So one day I made a conscious effort to go, you know what? There was a spare seat down the front. I think someone had retired, and then I thought, you know what? I'm going to sit there. And every day after that, I went and sat down in that seat right at the front. And what I found was Mick asked me so many more questions. Because you're right in front of him, and he'd be like, Leon, what do you think?
What do you think?
So it backfired a little bit, but it didn't stop me from sitting down there, and sort of, it forced me to not worry about everything else. It forced me to actually pay attention more on the game plan and know what needs to happen and where people need to be, and sort of that grew me as a player and a person as well. So, but as far as the sprays go, Jono used to get a lot. He used to get a lot. I remember Dawsey got a almighty spray one day, and I was just like, oh no. So, and then Eddie came in and gave a pretty good spray one day. We went on a camp.
Eddie?
We went on Eddie Maguire. We went
Gave
on
a spray to the boys.
the whole team. We'd gone.
I'll put
it in the context. It wasn't a footy issue. And the boys, all the boys that played then and were in the room, they'll probably have a laugh right now at this. But Ed came in. We had a camp up on the Gold Coast, and the boys had a few on that, and then played up a little bit, and then the place we were staying at actually contacted the club, and Eddie had to take he had to cop it and all that there, so he'd come in and just rip shreds off everyone. Just went crazy. So that was that was probably the biggest spray I've ever seen, with Ed coming in and doing that on that day. And to see a few of the boys sort of just doing the try not to laugh and and all that there, because they're straight away thinking about what they did on the camp that night and what happened. It was just crazy. So but that was one that I remember pretty in detail with Ed coming in and doing that.
I never thought of all people you've been involved with in the football world, Eddie Maguire would be the person that give you the biggest spray.
It was a good one. I don't think too many of the boys sort of took it serious, but looking back now, he got it was a lot bigger than Mick ever done, or Bucks or anyone else that was part of that. So but I was pretty fortunate. I didn't cop a spray too many times, so it was just more of a talking to, and Mick was like that with me. Really looked after me, and didn't spray me too many times. So yeah.
It's one of the worst things, I think, being a tall guy is you always like probably one of the first people look at. Yeah. You get that question, you're like, I've got to know the answer every time. You're like, oh, geez.
Yeah.
Well, going into this, I want to ask you this before we go into this next chunk. Now, your toughest opponent you ever played on?
Chris Johnson comes to mind. Mm-hmm. He was probably one of the best back pockets ever to play the game. Just the way he played against you and that. So yeah, he's one that I get along really well with, and you know, he's in the Gunditjmara, you know, where I live, and I'm married into that family and that tribal group. So he's part of that. So I see him pretty regularly, and it's always good to have a chat with him. But he's one that I actually played against, and well before my time, I was pretty young when I came up against him, and he'd obviously, you know, very experienced and knew the ropes pretty well. So sort of. What? Nah, none of that. None of the dirty stuff.
Just a good player.
Just a good player. Just dominated whenever. Sort of matched up on him and that. But as far as toughness, Stevie Baker, he was one. Really tough. Would always be India, niggling you, sort of bumping you around and that kind of stuff. He was one that did that. Mark Johnson early played for Essendon, one of the brothers. He was another one. But other than that, I think, you know, once I moved up into the midfield, the ability to have to cover the whole ground was a bit easier than just being in the forward line. Yeah. Forward pocket, half forward flanks, probably the hardest position to play on the field. If you're taller than marking it, you don't really get much opportunity. Like you said before, if they're not, you do. So, but yeah, just those guys that come to mind with, you know, pretty young coming into the game and obviously, you know, good battles and that. But you had to find a way to try and beat them and that kind of stuff. But, you know, like I say, if you're not having the best day in that and your work rate's not the best, which a lot of my career it wasn't, so it made it easier for them to nullify what I did on a footy oval. So those are a couple of names that come to mind.
Yeah, well, I think whenever I looked through your highlights, so I wasn't fortunate enough to see you playing back in the day because I wasn't here, but I look through your highlights and you do stuff that's just not, you can't teach. Like it's kind of like I see Bobby do it out on the field all the time. You're just sitting there and you've done 360s and running around, jumping over people and shit. I'm like, I physically couldn't do that if I tried, and you're naturally just doing it. Yeah. There's talking about people that you've played against that are tough. Now Headland from Freo didn't make that list.
He's gonna love it. He's gonna love this.
I think it's because he tried to take you on, got embarrassed, and then you essentially jumped over him, hurdled him, grabbed the ball, did a 360 around another player, and then decided to kick it from the pocket as if it was just the most casual thing you've ever done. And that ended up being the goal of the year.
It was. Yep.
How was that? Like, whenever that happened, like, walk me through it. I mean, are you just sitting there just going like, see pill, get pill?
Yeah. Look, it's something that Des is a cousin of mine.
Yeah,
I see him very regularly. Every time I see him, he'll bring it up and he'll be like, why do you have to do that to me? Why did you do that to me? And my response to that is, you tried to step me. You tried to make a fool out of me, so I just tackled you. I was just reacting to what you was doing. You should have kicked it, you know. So we've always had that, you know, ongoing since then, 2008, which is a lot of years ago. But, you know, every time I see him, we have a bit of a laugh about it and that. But at the time, it was just, I think the goal was just probably the easy thing in the end, you know, to kick it, you know, and that's what it's always been with me. It's not like that's the first time I've tried to do it, you know, since 6 years old. It's always been, you know, I've got two brothers, one younger, one older, had plenty of cousins always down the oval. It was always a competition. You know, we'd rock up to footy train and, you know, an hour and a half early, and it's just kicking, you know, snaps from the boundary. It's just kicking them from the, you know, so it's not like.
Never straight out in front.
Not never.
Oh, it's the boundary.
I always miss them ones too. So, you know, so they have those that, you know, to try it time and time again and kick those goals always at home. Like, always had a footy in my hand. So it was always, we'd go somewhere, and if I couldn't bring my footy, I'd stay home. If we were riding our bikes around and I couldn't ride the bike one-handed and hold a footy, you know, I'd stay home. Like that kind of stuff. I always had my footy. So every time I walk in places, it's like, oh, yeah, look, watch this. And there'd be a fork in a tree or a hole in this or something, you know, and all that. And or something's going past and like someone's riding a bike and you try to hit them off and look, all this kind of stuff that I've always had a footy in my hand and always done that. So, you know, you get to AFL level and you get the opportunity to do that. It's just, I sort of just always try and know where the goals are and just try and, kick it towards there because I've done it so many times. It's not really a fluke or it's not luck because you practice something enough. It's just what you normalise it. You know what I mean? So for me to kick a snap from the boundary, a lot of people see it and go, oh, I did all this stuff. But for me, it's like, well, I've done it plenty of times before. So that's where the, really, just, okay, whatever kind of comes into it because, it's something that you do. And Bobby's been doing that since he's because he's from where I'm from.
Yeah.
Growing up, he was in the same pocket doing the same stuff that I did. Because he's from where I'm from, he's, close nephew of mine, like I mentioned before. But I watched him as a junior, do what he's doing now. Left foot, right foot from a very young age. He was good on his left and his right, and he stood out very quick, like all this stuff that he's still got. But he was doing it from a very young age too. So when he's doing these snaps and you kick one similar to mine that I kicked against Carlton, everyone's going, oh, yeah, saying all this stuff. And he's been doing it for years as well. So, the guys that do that, it's not like they woke up yesterday and gone, okay, I'm going to try this. Oh, it paid off. Yeah, wow. No, they've been practicing and normalised it.
If someone offered you $1 million to kick a goal and you had to choose either straight out in front or from the corner, which one would you choose?
Probably 5 rows back in the stand, I reckon. Probably more chance of it. I've missed so many out in front. So, but yeah, look, I'd probably go, to have that bit of, put that extra bit of sauce on it. I'd probably go boundary. If you missed it, you missed it. If not, like it's $1 million would be fine. But how much better would it be if you done it from the boundary?
It's like Eddie Betts. I don't know if you saw the video of him whenever it's actually a fake video, which was not real. But I was like, in my mind, I was like, I actually believe it.
Yeah, I'm like, fake, really? I was more surprised that they said it was fake than him actually doing it. You know what I mean? Like he's one that, amazing to watch him. And like he's another one, Eddie's another one that came into the game after me, and to see him, develop and perfect his craft and become one of the, all-time greatest, small forwards ever, and playing that position, I know how hard it is. So for him to be able to do what he's done it's amazing. You know what I mean? So, but he'd be another one, done it from a very young age and just normalised it. He knows, doesn't even have to look at the goals. He just kicks it and it just somehow goes through.
Naturally.
He's just done it so many times.
Yeah, it's insane. I've got about this goal of the year, though, and looking at this video, now you got to be upset about one part of this, right? The commentators gave you fuck all. Like, it gave you nothing.
I know.
I was listening to it going like, surely you watched that live. You're out of your seat screaming, going, that was the most insane thing I've ever seen. He's like, yeah, they'll be goal of the year anyway. We'll go back to the center bounce. And I was like, what? That's it?
They didn't look after me like they should have on that one. But for mine, to make that goal way more special than what it was, probably not in my top 10 of goals that I've kicked in my career.
Okay,
like for myself, but for that goal to do it in Western Australia, to have 20 odd people in the stands, having my 2 brothers there and having all my family there watching, and to be able to do it that end where they always sat, it was it made it even better. Anytime I went home, I've always tried to put on a show for them and always back on country, back connected to my country and my culture and all that stuff. Just found, so much more energy and I just love playing back in WA. And everyone used to say, oh, why don't you come back and play all the time? It's like, no, look, Collingwood Football Club drafted me. So, and as far as West Coast and Freo went, they didn't. So I had this personal thing like, fuck yourself. You didn't pick me. So,
Did you ever get, I guess, like almost traded to someone else or ever looked to another team as an opportunity?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe
that's why you paid the agent. That's why you paid the agent.
Maybe it happened and I didn't know. But look, it's something that I'm glad that I stayed a one club player. That's something at the start of my career that I mentioned to my mum that I just wanted to play at the one team and sort of, play as many games as I could and just enjoy it while it was there. I know through a couple of lean years that a lot of people sort of said, get rid of me in the media and stuff like that. Mick, sort of looked after me and showed a bit of faith in me. So to play some good footy in, the later years of my career was good to reward him and the club. And I feel, that I was a pretty decent player by the end of it.
Yeah, that's this. And I told people at the beginning of this, we're going to talk about the favorite goals and stuff. What's your favorite First Nations player goal to ever be kicked?
Oh,
there's a few.
There's
a long list there.
So one of my favourite ones, which
not yours, by the way. No, you can't choose yourself.
No, I won't pick mine. Maybe third or fourth, but look for mine. It's I loved watching Peter Matera and Chris Lewis play footy. Growing up in WA, the West Coast Eagles and Fremantle Docker games were on all the time. It wasn't like they played Collingwood versus Carlton, over in WA, because they never did. It was always just the home teams getting played. So one of my favourite goals of all time is probably Peter Matera in the grand final, kicking it from 50 out after having a bounce, and then just put his arms up and he kicked 5 that day and won Norm Smith. So, for him to do what he did that day and that goal just stands out, just 50, I think it was 55 out. As the years go on, you sort of, he'd probably say it was 70 out. So, but, looking back now, but yeah, look, that goal stands out to me. You can't go past Eddie Betts. He's kicked so many good goals. Andrew McLeod, another one. Michael Long in the granny, another one. There's so many, buddy, just thinking about them now. Daniel Motlop, I remember one that he kicked that I was just like, that's so hard to do because I've tried it. He's kicked a check side on the wrong side of the oval from 50 up at the Gabba. I think, I'm pretty sure it was at the Gabba. He's kicked it check side from that side of the oval on the right foot. Yeah. So had no business going through, and he's just, kicked it from 50 out, check side on the wrong side, and it went through. So that's one that stands out, and really close mates with him, so he'd be happy that I mentioned that one. So, but there's some that stand out. But look, there's so many. There's so many. So to pick 5 out of all that, I think we need another about 5 episodes to do it, I reckon. So,
100% agree. Yeah. Well, I want to ask you this because we're gonna roll through this. Now, you've mentioned these names. You got Adam Goods. You've talked about Motlop. You talked about a few other First Nations players. Who's your favorite? Let's just not say like just from playing standards, but like your favorite overall, even on and off the field. Like who's your favorite like First Nations players?
Probably, leading into that, it's probably all First Nations players. I have huge respect for them, huge appreciation to go through what they went through for me to come into the game and not have to go through, the shit that they did. So for them to pave the way for that and to lay that foundation, going back to Sid Jackson, going back to the Cracker Brothers, going back to Longy, Nicky Winmar, all this kind of stuff, like it's Wally Lovett, our very own, played for us. To watch them and for them to go through what they went through and to pave the way for not just myself, but everyone else, First Nations people to come and play the game and it be better. I think that respect needs to be there and I always try and acknowledge that. On the back of that, my all-time favourite player is Adam Goods by far, like Goodsy, like just the way he played. And I reckon he could still be playing.
I reckon he could
and still be dominating.
100%.
But the way he went about his footy and he really looked after me and, just that brotherhood, just the, you go out and battle and you go up against each other and you want to win the game and that's that competitive streak. But always talked about other stuff than footy. How's the family? How's, anything you need, let me know, all this stuff. And for me to come in and into the game and get that off someone like him, paved the way for me to do the same. It was always, and you'd always see it, like after games of footy, you'd always see the boys go and see each other and, sort of check in on each other and stuff like that because we know what we go through. We know how much of a battle and a struggle it is to actually just live day to day. And then we've got this platform and this opportunity to play at the highest level, but still knowing when we see each other, it's just that little check-in to go, hey, how you going? You good? How's things at the club and all this stuff and how's, family and that and sort of check in and sort of have that connection again. And you go from there. So Goodsy was one that forever done that. He was someone that didn't take no shit. He stood up for what he believed in and a lot of times it's easy to sort of not fight back. It definitely takes a toll and if you fight back every single time, you'd lose your mind. You'd go crazy and you wouldn't be able to function and like every single time something happened. So to see him, consistently, raise awareness and fight back against it, he's one that definitely not only for our game but for society as well, really, put that conversation into a lot of households to go, what does that mean? What is that about? So for mine, it's having that broader impact other than just a playing field. Anytime anyone can do that, that's way better than, winning premierships and all that kind of stuff. I think for mine, it's you're changing people's attitudes, you're changing people's personalities, and you're just making the human race better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's all it is. It all comes down to your basic human, instincts and empathy, love, respect, caring, all these, attributes that we have as people, but it's making sure everyone gets it, not just a select few, or you're not this way for those people and not these, like that kind of stuff. And, Goodsy was one that was able to broaden that conversation off the football oval and into everyone's household, because he very intelligent how he done it and went about it. But, almost forced people to have that conversation in their houses to say, and kids are amazing at forcing parents to have to discuss things.
Yeah.
So
asking
anytime,
why.
and football's a great tool and a great vehicle to get that conversation going. And Goodsy was one that, and full respect to him, and something that I don't really talk much about is his football. It's about that stuff that he was able to impact and still impacts a lot of people on that journey. And anytime anyone can do that, like I said before, it's gonna help, us as a human race, rather than just footballers and other than just the game and the rule changes and putting these in place, that in place. That conversation you have in your household is important.
Well, I think of Goodsy, I think like the one word that always comes to mind is like legacy, like what your legacy is going to be. And his legacies are way bigger than sport.
Yep.
Like in what he's been able to do. Like you talk about people asking questions and the why question to parents and things like that. Like it's about people wanting to know more and wanting to learn. And I feel like he was a big spark for a lot of people to go, wait, why is it this way? Why do we think this way? Why are we saying this? Why are we doing this? And he was such a massive thing. And I wasn't here for a lot of it. Like I just kind of have learned throughout the years of everything he's done. But he's a phenomenal human. Yeah, like a phenomenal human.
It was at a time when, it was against the grain. It wasn't what normally happened. People didn't do that at that time, and he did. So then he challenged. He challenged everyone. And it inspired me. It inspired everyone to have to go, you know what? That's right. We can now be more outspoken and less, let's get on the front foot with it and start having these conversations. It's not only tough for non-First Nations people, it's tough for us too.
Yeah.
I get times where I'm just sick of having to have the same fucking conversation about racism and all this stuff, but I know there's a bigger cause to it. Yeah. And if I don't do my part, then what my father taught me and my mum taught me and my grandparents and generations before me have done, it's going to die now. It's for nothing. Yeah. The generation of today and the future have to keep pushing that, and at the moment at the club, it's so pleasing. And I mentioned it with Steele when we done the press conference. It's like, I'm no longer at the front on my own because I've got that support of everyone at the club to say, we want to learn more. We want to know. We want to be educated. We want to know how to do this, what conversation have, what does this mean, what does that mean? So for me, I'm no longer at the front on my own and everyone's behind me. It's like side by side. Like we got that at the club for a reason. And that's how I feel moving forward. Still a lot of work to do, but I feel at the moment it starts in the club and then it extends further out to our members, to the wider community. And the drive that we're on at the moment, the cultural drive that we're on at the moment at the club is powerful, and it's good to have those conversations and just anyone that wants to have a chat about it, like open, honest, anytime. Yeah. Happy to have that. It does get tiring, like I said, but the bigger cause of it all and to obviously keep working off the foundation of, generations before us, it'd be wrong of me not to keep pushing that, and having those conversations. Yeah,
I think of like you, and I think of like Eddie Betts and how every time something happens, it's like he's like the go-to person in the media to talk about it. And I think to him, and I always think in my mind, I'm like, that's got to take a toll on you. Like it's got to be frustrating to be like, fuck, now I've got to speak for not only just myself, but like every single person that's part of this community. Yeah. I have to be this, this shining light kind of voice for everyone. And it's like, it's a credit to him. Like, I don't think a lot of people realize that of what he has to deal with and what he has to as one of the people in the media for First Nations people, that's probably, the most as far as commentating and stuff like that, as far as visibility. Yeah. It's insane.
And that's Eddie. Like, and he's got that experience of being on an AFL list, being in a huge, community of AFL people and being in that environment for so long. Like for mine, I think of people without that platform, without that, foundation of strength and unity of his family and him growing as a person. Like me, like I'm totally different now to what I was when I played because I didn't have that support. I wasn't as culturally rich as what I am now. I've gone home and done my cultural, responsibilities and got back on country and learnt so much more off my dad, which I didn't do for, 10, 12 years. In little bits, yeah, when I've off season and you go home and all that kind of stuff, for mine, but it takes a toll. So for mine, I think of, people in their workplace.
Yeah.
For me, when I was here for a lot of years, I was the only person of colour, not just First Nations person, but person of colour here. So it didn't matter whether it was something that happened here. It might have happened overseas. It might have been on TV.
Yeah.
But I'd get into the club and all the boys would be like looking at me like, how's he feeling today? What's his mood going to be? Like, what do you think about that? It's like, fuck. It's in a different country.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, this, I can relate to that because that happens here to me. Oh, what? Really? Yeah, it does, yeah. Like that kind of stuff, So, but to continue having those conversations and that, like we carry the trauma of our ancestors and the generations before us, but we also carry their fighting spirit, So that's something that I draw on all the time, knowing and understanding that I've got it way better than what generations before me had.
Yeah.
Slavery, fucking genocide, all this kind of stuff that we've been through as a people, stolen generation, for it to be government policy to actually try and breed out the color of my skin, for that to be government policy, and for us to still be here and for me to have this color of my skin, is amazing. It's what they tried to do. They tried to breed out the black in us. So that's why stolen generation came about, because they'd take the fair ones and they'd marry them up with white. And then the generations after that, the skin color slowly goes because you got a fair person and a white person. They have kids, then they have kids, then they have kids. Like that's where there's no more this, So for us to still be here and have that is amazing. But we have to still be having these conversations and a lot of people sit in that space and are uncomfortable, really uncomfortable to hear that. It happened hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Well, hang on, my dad still remembers having to run from the government because he was going to get taken.
Yeah.
He would have been part of stolen generation. Him and all the kids around him in the camps, they actually had hiding spots, designated hiding spots where they'd run and hide until an adult came and got them. That's my dad. That's my father. That's not generations and they're dead and buried and gone.
Yeah.
That's my dad. So people that say, it happened, it's recent as that.
Yeah.
So
I also think about the people listening, right? I think people that are listening, they might be part of a club, whether it be netball, whether it be, football, whatever it is. And they might have people from different backgrounds, multicultural, First Nations, whatever it might be. Is there any advice you would give someone who's helping run a club or is supporting someone that is of that culture? Would you have any advice for them to make them feel more comfortable? I think of what you've done for, Ash, Bobby, Krugs, and making them feel as though they're part of something bigger and part of a family and everything like that. Is there any advice to those people that are running a club or whatever it may be involved in a club that has someone like that? Can you give any advice to them to make them feel better? Or not better, more inclusive? Yeah,
more inclusive. Yeah. Look, the luxury, for mine, and I'll give the example of being back at the Collingwood Football Club. I'm big on First Nations people and traditional owners of this land. At the same time, I'm very respectful and very understanding that we have a very multicultural football club, a very multicultural community. So to not only celebrate, and we, first and foremost, we do need to pay respect and celebrate that we are on traditional land. We are on First Nations people's land here. But then to celebrate and really come together with all different cultures and communities that we share, and I'm big on that. You do a welcome to country. Every time I do one or acknowledgement, always acknowledge the land we're on, but then the different cultures from all over the world that find themselves here and sharing this place. We all share the room. We all share this place. We all share a workplace. We all share this community, and to be respectful and have your basic human, qualities that we all should have. To everyone, you know what I mean? So for mine, it's to football clubs, workplaces and all that. It's definitely having the conversations, just having conversations around issues that might face, you know, the community, whether it be, you know, First Nations or multicultural or whatever it is, but seeking out when it is NAIDOC week, when it is, you know, your Indigenous round, and then not being limited to doing stuff on those days or weeks, you know, have those conversations all the time.
Yeah.
You know,
don't just change the Twitter bio or the Instagram thing.
Acknowledge that you're on. Acknowledge that you're on country. You know, acknowledge that, you know, people that come to the club, have a day where you celebrate that, whatever it is, you know, just be open and have conversations with your First Nations people or your people from other places that you want to celebrate. Have conversations with them because it differs. Now I can sit here and say, oh, Wurundjeri, I can't speak on Wurundjeri because I'm not from here. Yeah. I'm not a traditional owner here. So I can't speak on that. You'll have to ask. Same as me saying, oh, wherever you're from, oh, how about we go do this, that, and this? And you're going, hang on. No, we don't do that here. Like, you know, it's rude of me to come into your house and tell you what to do, how to do this, how to do that. You know what I mean? It's about, if you want to do that, my first port of call will be, what do you want to do? What do you reckon we should do for this, that? Some people take it on, other people don't. But having that relationship with them and understanding who they are as people, you'll know whether to talk to them or get someone that they can talk to. Because a lot of people through Stolen Generation aren't comfortable to talk about their culture. Yeah. Because one of the first questions that I do talk about is, who's your tribe, where you're from, totems, who's your mob, where's your, you know, where you from, who's your mob? That's a very, very open question that a lot of First Nations people get asked straight away when you meet them. Oh, you going, well, where you from? Who's your mob? Like that kind of stuff. And if people don't know, they get very embarrassed. But it's very, very normal for people not to know because they haven't been taught that. Yeah. Because their grandmother might have been Stolen Generation. She still doesn't know where she's from because she was taken at 3 years old. Yeah. Never returned. Parents didn't know where she was. He was. They grow up, you know, and they don't know anything. That's the reality of it. So a lot of people today growing up and you say, oh, who's your mob, where you from? They go, oh, I don't know, like, you know, and they'll get closed off and shut down, and it's an embarrassing thing to happen. And I've seen it happen so many times. So my advice would be have those conversations and just general conversations about anything. Yeah. And then you'll get to know the person, you'll get to know who they are, and if they're part of that club, how can you best, you know, celebrate or support them, you know, all year round, you know, and then make a point of it to say, we want to do something for NAIDOC week. We want to do something for our Indigenous round. Do something special, you know, do something special, like, you know, to celebrate that. You know, but I think too many times, like I said before, it becomes an uncomfortable place to sit in to have those conversations. But be brave, be bold enough to actually, you know, open up that conversation, because most of the time people will just, that's all that needs to happen, to have a conversation with someone. And then yeah. And I'll go back to the Tennant Creek trip, which you went on. The one, well, you didn't come when I went up, but the guys that did, you know, they had an amazing experience with me talking about my culture and talking about cultural stuff, and they just had no idea. So they're sitting there going, I did not know that. Had no idea. But unless you have those conversations, then that's just a appetizer for you to actually go off and learn more. You know what I mean? So that's a lot of the stuff I do, is just to open the door, just to say, look, you know, now go off and, you know, learn more if you want to.
Yeah. Look up more.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully sport, and I feel like it is a, you know, an avenue for people to understand more, to ask more questions, to want to know more, because, you know, we give this platform to be able to show people, you know, how proud you are of your culture and how much it means to you. Like, I hope people realize that sport is such a great avenue for us to be able to do that. And it's incredible, man. It's incredible what you're doing now. It's incredible what you have done throughout your career, not only from a football standpoint, but everything else. And it's pretty amazing. But I'm not letting you get out of here without this question. Top 5 First Nation players of all time.
5th. I'd have to...
Big 5.
Yeah, big 5. It's a big 5. I'd probably go personal with the 5th one. That's... I've got 2 brothers.
No, 2 brothers.
So I've got one younger, one older. Both totally different players in their own sense, but to watch them go about their footy and way better than me, that what I was as a footballer, to see them and their attributes that they had and how they used them, I'd have to put them 2 at number 5.
We've got 2 for 1 on 5.
Yep. So it's not top 6. They're both at 5. So
4.
4th. Look, I think Nicky Winmar, what he was able to do in the game and you know, for our people as well, at a time where you know, things weren't so easy. I think I'd chuck him at number 4.
Great acknowledgement at Vic Park the other day too, and we had Jamar on last week. And we had a bit of a laugh with him about something he did in a game.
I've seen it. So funny.
But it's been amazing seeing him almost be, having that knowledge.
Oh, definitely.
Like the role model part of it that Jamar has now taken on has been pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. And that's just what we need to do. And him, and I know him personally. I know his mum. Like I know, his family and that. Very close with him back down in Warrnambool and that there. Very, very rich culturally. Very, very connected. Very switched on with his culture and that. And he shows that. He wears it. He wears it openly, and that's amazing for someone as young as him and have the platform he does, and to do that now, you can only imagine what he's going to do for the rest of his career and what he does off the field. You know what I mean? I see it firsthand what he does off the field, so it's amazing to see that.
Pretty amazing. Maybe he'll make your top 3 next. So 3? What are we got for 3?
Oh, he's a bit young yet. Maybe the end of his career he will. For you to kick that goal. And number 3, I'd have to say probably Buddy Franklin.
3 is Buddy.
Buddy's that 3.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Buddy's that 3.
1 and 2.
Yep. Buddy's that 3. So, with Bud, just, what he's been able to do again, you know what I mean? Like he's probably led the way for so many more young players to come through. And that's not just young First Nations players, that's young players in general. I know a lot of time the media get that mixed up with, and I've got it so many times where it's, you're great for the, Aboriginal people and, young Aboriginal and all this stuff. And it's like, pretty sure, you don't have to be Aboriginal to play like I do, that stuff. So when I say that, it's definitely comes from somewhere. So, but at number 3, unstoppable.
Freak out.
Unstoppable. And he comes from Balladon country too, so where I'm from. So that helps.
How do you know I crack your top 2 then? We got number 2.
Number two. I'd have to go, Chris Lewis.
Yeah, okay, I know number 1 is.
Chris Lewis. Lewis, the same. The struggles that he had to face, and a lot similar to a lot of other players in his career and generation that went through what he went through. But just to play footy and on top of the shit that he had to go through is amazing, and had it way worse than what I did when I played. I think it's been well documented what he did go through. But for him to go through that has definitely made it easier for everyone that plays the game today to be out there enjoying it in a safer space than what it was for him. So for him to be able to do that, amazing. And I got to watch him most weekends too. So and I've met him a few times, and great bloke. So he's one of my favourites. So he's in there at number 2. And number 1's no surprise, Adam Goods. Just spoke on him before, so don't need to say too much more on him. But brother boy of mine and someone I really, really respect, and it goes both ways. So
yeah, no, he's an incredible human. All 5 of those are, to be honest, including yourself, mate. We'll put you at 6. We'll put you at 6. But seriously, mate, thanks so much for coming on. I think hopefully a lot of people have taken out a few learnings from this, and maybe go back and do a bit of research themselves on trying to get educated on the subject. So thanks everyone for listening. Thanks so much for Leon for coming on. Absolute legend. I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and we will speak to y'all next week.